T.J. Joseph, 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Goodbye, he is gone!
Touchdown, Michigan! Royce off the Heisman!
And listen to this joint go wild.
Ladies and gentlemen, the head football coach at The Ohio State University, Jim Tressel.
I didn't know a lot about Coach Tressel. I knew he was a great coach at Youngstown State, but I just didn't know a ton about him. You know, he wasn't a big name. It wasn't a big splash hire for Ohio State.
He was an unknown coming into the whole coaching hunt with the names that were being thrown around, and we didn't really know who Coach Tressel was.
We were a tad bit skeptical from the result of the choice of Jim Tressel, because we were interviewing Tyrone Willingham, we were interviewing Glenn Mason, and then this man named Jim Tressel. We kind of had to do our research after he was named our coach.
I can assure you that you'll be proud of our young people in the classroom, in the community, and most especially in 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Literally 5 minutes after it was a halftime speech, my phone rang, and he called me from the arena to basically court me to Ohio State, because I still wasn't committed. I was wavering on where I was going to go, and I think that was what sold me, was, you know, seeing that speech, and then the phone call from him. It was surreal.
It was the first time as an athlete I had ever really had a coach kind of put it out there like that.
It was something that the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry needed from a Buckeye perspective. We needed something new. We needed something bold. We needed to declare that we were going to revive the rivalry in favor of the Ohio State Buckeyes.
John Cooper would be the first person to tell you that it was his lack of success against Michigan that cost him his job. And people around here loved John Cooper then, love him now. He brought great talent, had great teams, but they never could quite get it done on a regular basis against Michigan.
When Ohio State hired Jim Tressel, they were looking for a change. They were looking for a change of demeanor, a change of momentum. And Jim Tressel immediately threw the gauntlet down. Things were going to change.
Ohio State, Michigan, it's one of the top 5 in all of sports, the rivalry. So he knew he had to hit on that. It's just not another game. We had in our weight room a countdown clock of when the kickoff would be against Michigan. In film rooms, there was always Michigan film. So he was constantly planning for that and constantly having it on the team's mind to prepare for the game.
Have an amazing blue period during practice, during training camp, and things like that. I mean, you could definitely tell there was a renewed energy.
Before Jim Tressel could prepare his squad for the challenge the Wolverines presented, he gave his new team a test of their own.
We'd have to write down players' jersey numbers, players' names, players' hometown, and what high school they went to, and it would be graded.
We had to know that Simon Fraser went to Upper Arlington. You didn't know he was number 75. You didn't know that C. Grant went to New Philadelphia High School. Things like that.
We would either be rewarded by less conditioning or penalized by more, depending on the outcome of the test. And we would be scrambling around, and you know, it was in all due fun. I'd run up to you and say, hey, what's your name? I've been working out with you for 4 weeks. What's your name? Where are you from?
I think it comes down to that belief that you can't do any close relationships. We thought that that was really critical, to want to know about one another and to want to actually know one another. And when you're close like that and the going gets tough, there's a better chance that you hang together.
Often referred to as Senator, Tressel was part football coach, part salesman, and part politician, especially with the media.
I think that's why he was so successful, was because he thought about every angle, not only with football, but with the media. I mean, everything was calculated.
He was a guy who, if the media asked you what time it was, he'd tell you how to build a watch, but he'd never tell you what time it was. It's just who he was. He was a savvy, witty, charming, charismatic, intelligent person.
The genius of all great coaches is deep down in their gut. They are detail-oriented guys, and Jim Tressel had an eye for detail.
310 days after his introduction, Jim Tressel and the Buckeyes faced their first big test, traveling to Ann Arbor to meet that team up north. with a sophomore quarterback making his first ever start.
A kid from Michigan who grew up in Michigan started against the team up north. He found a way to get it done. So that was a big development for him, was to get that win under his belt, to beat Michigan, get that confidence.
Craig Tressel, his first start ever as a college football player, and no one really knew what to expect, except Jim Tressel knew Michigan was beatable that year.
Wells over the right side, got the first down, he may have a touchdown. He's gone, touchdown Ohio State.
Craig had a steadiness about himself. He had a little swagger, but he had a confidence about him. And we really felt going into the big house, we were playing against a team that was probably favored significantly over us, that steady hand is what we needed.
Craig Tressel made enough plays in the first half, and Ohio State prevailed, and a legend was born.
Navarre to the air, deep, intercepted. Ohio State holds off the upset.
It's funny, the Michigan-Ohio State game had kind of become passé in Ann Arbor over the previous decade. They even were making some comments at one point that their biggest rivalry was with Michigan State. Suddenly it hit home, I think, in 2001, that yes, Ohio State can make it a rivalry again.
If you beat Michigan, you have a successful season. So in 2001, we get a new starting quarterback, and we beat Michigan. It did a lot of enriching confidence in Craig Tressel to let him know that he could lead this team to victory. And what other way to prove it than to go up to Michigan and win the football game? It brought a lot of momentum to this city and to our program to get ready for the 2002 season.
Big Ten Elite is brought to you by Chase Freedom. Get your cash back. Go to chase.com/freedom and activate bonus cash back today.
My mother told me to get my education, and I will be returning back to Ohio State.
Mike Doss was a guy who was a two-time All-American and came back for his senior year. And when he came back, we made a press conference, and he said that he was coming back to win a national championship. And I think that guys bought in.
Mike was the guy that everyone kind of looked up to. And when he made up his mind to come back for his senior year, I remember I was still in high school, and I was excited.
You can't win the national championship in spring football, but you can darn sure lose it. Michael Doss was someone who literally put the responsibility of his senior year and Ohio State football team's senior year on his back.
Senior safety Mike Doss headlined the returning Buckeye players in 2002, and he and his teammates welcomed a heralded class of incoming freshmen that many recruiting gurus tabbed as the second best class in the country.
When you look at that recruiting class, the guys that were freshmen in 2002, there was a huge amount of talent that came in with that class. And, you know, those guys were freshmen, and they were hungry for the opportunity because they had seen 6-6. They had seen 7-5. They had seen 8-4. And, you know, guys coming in being more eager to get in the front of the line, to run their mouth. And you still had a group of upperclassmen that had worked their tails off, haven't enjoyed that success, and were ready to push those guys to the back of the line.
I think it really brought the best out of a lot of the juniors and seniors. I mean, you had people come in like A.J. Hawk, Bobby Carpenter, and they were pushing the guys that were going to be starting that year, pushing Robert Reynolds, and I still remember A.J. really pushing C. Grant. I mean, C. Grant made the jump from corner to linebacker, and I think that's what made C such a great linebacker.
The biggest thing I saw was a belief, an agreement amongst a bunch of people that we're done with mediocrity. We're done with 6-6 and 8-4 and 7-5. That's not going to be who we are anymore.
While the 2002 recruiting class boasted many talented newcomers, one player stood out from the crowd.
Tressel will hand to the tailback. Maurice Clarett over right tackle to the 50-yard line. To the 40 down the right side. Clarett to the 20, to the 10, and Maurice Clarett into the end zone.
You could see Maurice Clarett in the first day of practice make a difference with our team because there was no half speed.
When you talk about these guys coming in with the expectation they're going to start, they're going to play early, they're going to contribute, he really fit that mold well. He had that sense of, I am going to take the world by storm. Best running back on this football team.
Coach Hazel loved Coach Maurice Clarett because he knew that he was going to get 100% all the time. And I think that's what Jim Tressel liked about Maurice is that, hey, out on the practice field, you're going to get it all. In the game, you're going to get it all. He wants to win.
Clarett gets the game's first carry. Huge hole on the left side. Cut to the 40. 45 to midfield.
The first thing that stood out about Maurice Clarett was he wanted to gain yards. That may sound stupid for a running back. He wanted to always fall forward. He always wanted to get the extra foot, inch, whatever it was. He wasn't a world-class sprinter by any stretch, but he had that speed, that football speed, that really served him well from turning a 10-yard gain into a 30-yard gain or a 5-yard toss into like a 15-yard gain, which are huge yards during a football game. He had what I call a knack for the crack.
He came in early in spring, so he joined us for that first winter conditioning, and he won every drill. He won every single drill, and you know, we would rumor this freshman, this is going to die off. It never stopped. Maurice continued to outwork everyone on the football field.
I can't say of anybody else on the team that had a mean streak like him. When he got the ball, he wanted to hurt you, and I think that's what makes a good running back.
Ohio State at the 2 on first down. Clarett, touchdown. Virtually untouched.
Clarett scored 7 touchdowns and rushed for nearly 500 yards in his first 3 games. Against Washington State, his 230 yards on the ground were 9 yards shy of Archie Griffin's single-game rushing record for a freshman. While Clarett seemingly had no weaknesses on the ground, he encountered his first speed bump when he and the Buckeyes flew to Northwestern for a road game.
Hit hard at the 44. Dominique Price comes up and they may have knocked it loose, and they did. And Northwestern recovered.
Tension creates a lot of things. The particular game that Maurice had a little bit of a confrontation, if you will, with Tim Spencer on the sideline, not only was Maurice not having quite as good a game as he'd like, or was Ohio State having quite a good game as they'd like, but it was Maurice's first plane flight in his life.
Yeah, it is amazing that the young man who was going to help take this team places had never flown on an airplane before, and how much that unnerved him.
All week long during the course of the game week, when we were talking about itineraries and meet the plane at this time, you could just see him fidgeting a little bit. And in fact, I remember he and I talking a little bit about the fact that he said, Coach, don't you remember I didn't go visit anywhere on recruiting trips? It wasn't because I didn't want to. I didn't want to fly.
He actually sat right in front of me, and he was a nervous wreck the whole time. I remember somebody playing a trick on him underneath the seat where there's some steel where you can, you know, kick it or flick it, and it'll give you a little vibration. They were messing with him a little bit. We had to tell him to stop just because of the way he was. I mean, he was going to the stewardess and saying, there's a problem with the plane. So
I think he was still shaken by the time the game started.
Clarett shook off the jitters, running for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 27-16 win over Northwestern and lifting the Buckeyes to a 6-0 record. Despite nagging injuries throughout the season, Clarett led Ohio State with over 1,237 yards and 16 rushing touchdowns. Still, many in Columbus were concerned that the spotlight was too bright for the talented freshman.
He had been gaining a lot of yards, and, you know, all of a sudden people are tugging at you and wanting your time and wanting to do interviews, and you're starting school. So there's tension involved in all change.
There was concern about Maurice Clarett. He came to Ohio State with a lot of speculation that there might have been some baggage that came with him. The incident in the Northwestern game, he gets in an argument with his position coach, Tim Spencer, who's a former Ohio State player, and that lost a lot of people. The injuries obviously became a big concern. There were some dark clouds that kind of followed Maurice when he came here.
He was always in a hurry to get to that next level, to get to that next point in his life, and he was in a hurry to get to Ohio State. As it turned out, he was in a hurry to get to the NFL, but that's another story.
You can oftentimes let yourself get spoiled by getting to play in the horseshoe week in and week out. And you allow yourself to think, Archie Griffin stood on this field, Rex Kern stood on this field, Eddie George stood on this field, and to be able to stand on that field and have those 100 and some thousand fans going absolutely bananas for your team, it's something so few get to be a part of.
Second and goal from the 6.
We used to always talk about the big 3 things that a quarterback had to possess. We used to always say that he had to be a great decision maker, that he had to minimize or eliminate our turnovers, and he had to make big plays. We added a 4th one: our quarterback better be tough, because we could see Craig Krenzel's toughness was making a huge difference.
Probably one of the most gifted athlete, but good enough. Probably not the best passer, but good enough. Probably not the fastest guy out there in the field, but faster on game day than most guys up here.
I think the number one thing any player, whether you're an offensive lineman, a quarterback, a defensive back, is to understand the system that you're playing in, what the expectations are going to be, and then what can we do in terms of our responsibilities to put our team in the best position to win football games. And that was something that I took very seriously.
Craig Krenzel embodied what a championship quarterback needs to be, from obviously his physical play. And I think from a leadership perspective, we couldn't have chose anyone else to do that. People know how smart he is. Molecular genetics was his undergrad degree. But you really can't gauge someone's toughness if they've never been hurt. Craig never missed a game, never missed a play, never missed anything due to injury.
I've seen a lot of guys who have a 3.76 GPA, but all of a sudden they're under fire and they're not smart anymore. Well, Craig, under fire, still had a 3.76 GPA. And he had that knack to make big plays when we needed them.
While Craig Krenzel emerged as a reliable playmaker for the Buckeye offense, wide receiver Chris Gamble unexpectedly emerged as a playmaker on both sides of the ball.
Chris Gamble is a freak. He is one of the best athletes I've ever come across.
In practice, our corners will check our wideouts in one-on-one drill, and our wideouts will then go play defense, and our DBs, who all think they're great receivers, will go run routes and see if the offensive guys can check him. Well, every time Chris Gamble was on defense, the poor guy running against him couldn't even get up the line of scrimmage. I mean, he couldn't even think about getting a catch.
We thought he was jumping routes because he knew the offensive playbook. This guy's cheating. He's intercepting all these balls in practice. So maybe the coaches said, let's see if he's really jumping routes, and put him in on the defense. And he is a lockdown corner.
We're getting ready to play Penn State. I said, okay, now Chris can play all the plays you want him defense.
Rolling to the left side with the football in his own 9. Throws up the left sideline, picked off. Picked off by Chris Gamble down the right sideline to the 10. He's moving up to the middle of the field. Gamble to the 5 into the end zone. Chris Gamble, touchdown.
I just remember how many times it seemed like he zigged and zagged. It made me tired just thinking about it.
He played both ways. Played 120-some plays a game. And I'd always go up to him in practice, or I'd go up to him in the game, knowing that wear and tear, and there's no way that physically you can play 120-some plays a game. And I'd say, CG, you all right? And the only thing he said to me for 14 games was, I'm straight.
I was young still. I mean, I just felt like when I was on the field, I just wanted to make things happen, and I was having fun at the same time. But like I told him, I was all right. You know, as long as we winning and as long as I'm doing my part, I'm good.
On the reverse, Gamble down the sidelines. Nobody will catch him. Touchdown, Ohio State.
I don't have a whole lot of regrets about my time at Ohio State. Probably the number one regret that I have is that we didn't do a good enough job of getting him the ball on the offensive side. But for him to make the conversion, to switch over to play offense and defense. I mean, he could have been a star on the offensive side of the ball had we given him the ball more.
You always look back on that year and just wonder if they had exploited Chris Gamble more on the offensive side of the ball, how much unclose a lot of the close games would have been.
I remember thinking, you know, if Charles Woodson can win a Heisman Trophy over Peyton Manning, you know, how is Chris Gamble not winning?
I talk to my parents, and they always talk about how their lives are going to be at least 10 years shorter having lived through that entire season, because every game was so exciting to be a part of.
As undefeated Ohio State readied for the teeth of the Big Ten schedule, one word defined how they were winning games: thrilling. 5 of their last 6 games were won by less than a touchdown. No game defined the cardiac Buckeyes better than a trip to West Lafayette, where the Scarlet and Gray trailed 6-3 as the clock ticked under 2 minutes.
It's 4th and 1, Ohio State at Purdue. Late in the game, they need a score. They're going into the win. Maurice Clarett is hurt. Of course, with Tressel ball, you're always thinking they're going to go for it on 4th and 1, but they're going to go for it on the ground.
King right 64. Why shallow swap?
What it means is we were supposed to hit the tight end for about a 3-yard gain on 4th down and 1.5, and the tight end wasn't open.
The play before, we had run the exact same play to get us in the 4th and 1. I'm sure that the Boilermakers were the same way, knowing that that was a very common play for us, so they probably were thinking the same thing and jumped me on the crossing route.
As Craig drops back to throw, you see him start to stumble at first before he sets up to throw, and so that has in your mind, uh-oh, here's problems.
Here we go. This is the whole ball of wax right here. We either get a first down or we're done.
What was I thinking when the ball was in the air? I hope it's complete. I hope he didn't overthrow it.
And I see him launch this ball. I go, oh, it's over. Do it again next year. It's like, what is going on?
Even though it's 4th and 1, even though the ball's going 40 yards downfield, even though Coach Tress was probably on the sideline yelling the same 4-letter word at me that everybody staring at their TV was, you know, at that point, you got to trust your instinct.
I just saw our section just explode. I went out in the field, saw Jenkins come up with the football, and I just realized we scored a touchdown. I look at Craig, and he's, you know, doing the circles, hands in the air, and I'm like, how did he have the guts to throw that ball?
The Ohio State fans were going bonkers, and Purdue still had a shot. They had the wind at their back to begin with, and Orton just launches this deep pass down the field. I can't remember the receiver, but Donnie Nicky was the safety, and the receiver seemed to have a step.
Coach Tressel always said, if you want to be a great team, if you want to be a team that someone remembers, you got to be undefeated in November. And we had come that far, and we didn't plan on losing in November. So we started to look around and say, why not? Why not us? Why not this Ohio State Buckeye team? Why not this team who was 7-5 last year and who really doesn't have a marquee player? Why not us?
The following week, the Buckeyes traveled to Champaign to face an Illinois squad that was more talented than its 4-6 record indicated.
The Purdue game kind of put things over the top, that maybe this was a team of destiny. And what was really odd about the Illinois game is when Illinois came back and tied that game late, and it went to overtime, the first overtime in Ohio State football history, there was a sense Ohio State was going to pull it out. Because they pulled out the Purdue game, the Penn State game, they pulled out the Cincinnati game. What's overtime?
Here's Tressel. 2 weeks, 2 nail-biters. With a Big Ten title on the line, the Buckeyes return to Columbus to prepare for a Michigan team with revenge on their mind.
The biggest challenge in the 2002 Ohio State-Michigan game was the reality that Michigan didn't like losing the year before, and they were going to play better than they were. The other reality was all that other noise. If we win the Big Ten. If we win, we go to the national championship game, all that stuff.
As players, we're not dumb. We're not idiots. You're not in a shelter somewhere. You're watching TV, flipping on ESPN. You're hearing everybody say the same thing. Ohio State's back in the position that it's been in a number of times, and Michigan has killed that season a number of times.
We were playing Kent State, and we were blowing them out. So I got to go in the game, and I got really lucky. He threw a little slant, and I was able to intercept it, run it back for a touchdown. We didn't have that rule in high school that you hand the ball back to the official, and Coach Tressel always said that no matter what, you hand the ball to the official when you score a touchdown. And obviously I was a freshman, 18 years old, and had no, I was, stupid. I didn't know what I was doing, so I scored, and I was just so excited I scored. I think I just kind of spiked the ball behind me. He comes up to me and kind of pats me on the head and says, "Oh, AJ, yeah, good job," whatever he said, "but why didn't you hand the ball to the official?" And I'm like, I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know what happened. What did I do with the ball?" And he's like, "You threw that thing halfway to Centerville," which is where I'm from, about 80 miles away. I was like, "Oh, okay." And luckily he was okay with it. And he even mentioned it again when we watched the film of the game the next day, that I need to hand the ball to the official if I ever get another chance to score.
You come to Ohio State to play against Michigan, undefeated, national title. I mean, that's what your dream is. You aspire to play at the best programs in the country and be on the stage in the biggest game.
In the biggest game, Michigan and Ohio State staged a classic. Maurice Clarett returned to action for the first time since the Purdue victory and scored the lone first-half touchdown. Still, the Buckeyes trailed 9-7 midway through the fourth quarter, when Clarett proved he could make an impact with more than just his feet.
Maurice Clarett had noticed that on a play-action fake, it appeared Michigan was not really respecting him as a receiver after the fake. They were more worried about taking away Michael Jenkins, Chris Gamble, or whoever else was out in the route. And he suggested the wheel route, thought it would be wide open, and lo and behold, it was.
Takes the handoff. Tressel's going to throw a first down. Got a man wide open. It's Clarett. Out of bounds at the 6-yard line. Tressel with the ball. Option pitch. Hall right side. 5-yard line. Touchdown, Maurice Hall. Trailing 14-9, the Wolverines pushed the Buckeyes defense to the brink twice. Each time, the home team had an answer.
Great time, fumble! Ball's picked up finally by the Buckeyes. Finally, the ball was rolling around. LaFatina's there. First down, Buckeyes!
They had the ball moving, and Darian Scott makes a great play on the ball, strips the ball, we recover. Offensively, we're unable to run the clock out. We could have made that game a lot less interesting and got a couple first downs, taken a knee, chucked the ball up way up in the air, and celebrated. Kick the ball back to them, they move it up to midfield.
Throws into the end zone, intercepted at the 5-yard line, and the Buckeyes are headed to the desert as Ohio State gets an interception on the final play of the game to beat Michigan.
It was very surreal. The fans rushed the field, I think before Will even hit the ground, and the next thing you know, you're just in a sea of fans.
Will Allen's game-saving interception clinched a perfect 13-0 regular season. The Buckeyes then turned their attention to the South, where they were on a collision course with the defending national champion, Miami Hurricanes.
This was a game that was going to validate Miami as one of the dominant programs in the history of the game.
You think about what happened the year before in Pasadena, and that Rose Bowl got out of hand very quickly and just became a showcase for the program.
And that's all you heard about was Miami. How good their players are, how much more dominant they've been in their streak. They haven't lost in 2 years.
This was a team that could not be beat. It was easy to look at this game at first blush and say, mismatch, big-time mismatch.
Miami was a bad team. I mean, they had some players on that team. Blew the doors off Nebraska the previous year. So this Miami team was intimidating.
Intimidation turned into outrage once the Buckeyes learned that the Hurricanes appeared to be putting the national championship cart ahead of the horse.
They already made a flyer about the national championship party. I heard about it. They got a flyer saying back-to-back champions party January 4th. I got the flyer in my locker room. Thomas Matthews got it when he's in there. It's crazy.
There was a party planned already to celebrate their national championship. And, you know, Clinton Portis was going to be coming back and all the old Miami guys. And that pissed us off.
Just another show of disrespect. They're taking their eye off the prize. Thank you. Thanks for planning that party. Because it pissed us off, yeah. And we took that personal. How could you not?
I've always likened that game to the Buster Douglas-Tyson fight because Mike Tyson wasn't expecting Buster Douglas to throw the jab like he did and hit him in the face, you know, all night. And that's exactly what the Ohio State defense did to Miami's offense. Ohio State was just playing big-time, heavyweight, fight-type football and prevailing.
They were coming in saying, we've only given up 2 sacks all year, da-da-da. Well, first play of the game, and, you know, okay, that's debunked. All right, what else can we debunk? You know, and it was one of those men who deserved to be national champions.
3rd and 6. Pass comes, intercepted. Buckeyes have it. That's Mike Doss. 30, 25, inside the 20 before he's pulled out of bounds by Willis Brigade. 4th and a half a yard. A quarterback keeps it, and he's in there.
This is just some old adage that I have read before, and I think it's fitting because once an intimidator fails to intimidate, they didn't become intimidated. And we started to see that in their eyes a little bit.
He's got it. He's got a touchdown.
There was going to be no lay down. There was going to be no quit. We knew going into that football game that it was going to be a fight, that it was going to be a 60-minute game. We didn't know it was going to be longer than 60 minutes. But we knew it was going to be at least a knockdown, drag-them-out 60-minute fight against a very good football team. And, you know, I'm not sure they had the same mentality.
Renzo deep. Down the sidelines. Campbell. It's down inside the 10 and fumbled, and he's down.
After dominating second quarter to take a 14-7 halftime lead, the Buckeyes were poised to strike again on their opening possession of the second half. That's when the 2003 Fiesta Bowl would experience the first of what would be several Titanic momentum shifts.
We're down on the goal line. I think it's 1st and goal, and they're not easy to run the ball on, so I thought, well, let's do a little play-action pass, and, you know, that wasn't very smart. I should have stayed with my old Tressel ball.
Keeps it. Throws it to the end zone, and it is picked off. Picked off by Sean Taylor. He threw it right to it.
I always thank people for reminding me of that play. You know, because it was the largest play that we had as a football team that year.
I remember standing in the back of that end zone and seeing Craig and I lock eyes, and he starts his throwing motion, and I think, I'm going to catch a touchdown in the national championship football game, and this is going to be great. And all of a sudden, this hand just comes out of nowhere and gets it. I'm seeing Sean Taylor race the other way, and next thing you know, you see Clarett come from the side.
Clarett has stole the ball. Yes, he did, Keith. Maurice Clarett with the play of the game, perhaps.
That never say I can't attitude that Maurice had. We saw it on that play. To chase down, take the angle on a guy like Sean Taylor, and to not only make a touchdown-saving tackle, but to wind up with the football. That was that never quit, don't tell me I can't attitude that he possessed.
A Mike Nugent field goal put Ohio State ahead 17-7. Later in the third quarter, Miami narrowed the gap to 3 when Willis McGahee scored on a 9-yard TD run. Then suddenly, Early in the fourth quarter, McGahee was done for the night.
Will Allen comes out of nowhere, hits Willis McGahee, catastrophic knee injury. Wow, it was horrible. And suddenly, the air comes out of the balloon again for Miami.
Ohio State failed to run the clock out. The Hurricanes had one last chance to tie the game, and they made it count.
Parrish getting to the sidelines, gets a block. And he's finally taken down all the way down the field at the 26-yard line. Big return by Parrish.
The Buckeyes defense stiffened, forcing Miami place kicker Todd Sievers to attempt a game-time 40-yard field goal.
Chris Harvey snaps. Tressel holds. But we're going to overtime.
In overtime, Miami received the ball first and scored on a 7-yard TD pass to Kellen Winslow Jr. Ohio State needed a touchdown on their possession, but first they needed to convert a fourth.
Steps up and goes to the sidelines, and that's good for a first down. Caught by Michael Jenkins.
4th and 14, are you kidding me? Against that Miami defense? You think they're going to find a way to come up with a stop there? No, they don't.
It's one of those things, going back to the Purdue game. It's like, no, here it is, game over, you know. And we saw Mike come down with the ball, and that's where the D word started coming back into play. You know, this is destiny.
Later in the drive, Ohio State was faced with a 4th down and 3 on the Miami 5-yard line. With the season on the line, Craig Tressel went to Chris Gamble this time.
I didn't even see the play. When I released the ball, I got knocked over. Fireworks were going off. You know, they're rushing the field, and I knew right away fireworks aren't going off because we scored to tie the game.
Clarett up there as a wide out too. The ball goes into the end zone, and it is incomplete. Intended for Gamble. Now there is a penalty flag thrown.
I locked on watching that referee, and I could see he was processing. That brain was churning. Smoke was coming out of his ears, and he took forever. He could have knit a hanky in the time it took for him to make that decision.
Felt like eternity. It felt like 10 minutes. Miami guys are dancing, throwing their helmets in the air, you know, going crazy. And then you start to hear like some commotion coming down from the end. Oh, it's a penalty, penalty, penalty. Everyone started yelling, there's a flag on the field. I think at that point we knew, like, all right, this is about to happen. Once again, same feeling, Purdue, the Holy Buckeye play.
I took my helmet off, and I remember slamming it on the ground as hard as I could and kind of throwing it at the ground, and it bounced, you know, 8 or 10 yards away from me. I remember one of the guys coming over and saying, you know, hey, you got to get up. They threw a flag. And as I kind of realized, hey, what's going on here, my first thought was, where's my helmet? Oh, crap, I got to go find my helmet. And sure enough, it was about 10 yards away. So I kind of moseyed on over, picked up my helmet, walked back over like I was in control the whole time, knew what was going on. Yes, sir, we'll take the penalty. Let's keep going.
I was hurt, you know, but I knew it was a pass interference, but I didn't see the flag at the time. But once I seen it, I knew we had another chance to tie it up.
It was pass interference. They can say it all they want. It was pass interference. He may have took a long time to make the call, but it was a flag, and it should have been thrown. They'd have called it on me all day, because I think I led the Big Ten in pass interference calls that year.
I thought it was definitely the right call, and just like it took guts for Craig Tressel to throw that pass to Michael Jenkins at Purdue that day, it took guts to make that call. But really, the official, Terry Porter, was at ease with it.
Tressel sneaking touchdown.
Tied at 24-24, the teams went to a second overtime, with Ohio State getting the ball first. Fittingly, the Buckeyes season would conclude the way it began, with its leading rusher having a multi-touchdown game.
Second down from the 5. Clarett. Touchdown.
It is literally a microcosm of what made this guy great. Took the ball, started wide, saw that there was a crack inside, sideswiped a defender who had made a move on him, basically ran through another tackle, and then dove for the end zone.
With a 7-point lead, it was now up to the Buckeyes D to seal the victory.
By 7. Dorsey's pass incomplete.
He was pressured. Dorsey may be hurt, Keith. He took a hard hit.
That blitz had become our signature, our go-to defensive call.
With Ohio State leading 31-24 in the second overtime, the Hurricanes season came down to one last play on 4th and goal, and the Buckeye defense was in full attack mode.
Kellen Winslow and Dorsey under pressure. Throws it.
It's a kitchen sink blitz. We love that blitz. Ask any player on that defense about field mock-up. He comes off the edge and grabs Dorsey, and he's flailing to get rid of the ball. No better way to end it.
I see Ken Dorsey get pressured, and the ball comes up, and I just hit the ball down. And it all just kind of hits us at the same moment. Game over.
Best damn band in the land. Now we got the best damn team in the land.
Probably the biggest lesson that I reflect back on and I use every day is just how to respond to adversity, how to change a negative into a positive, and how to handle yourself in stressful situations. When you believe in something and you put hard work into it, it happens. It's real. Till the day I die, I'll always have that mentality of you can't beat me. And I think it goes back to that season.
I think you can really take it back to when he stood on that basketball court and made that declaration about Michigan. Coach Tressel had an unwavering belief in what we could accomplish. In a lot of ways, our team was the same way. When it came down to crunch time, we went to work.
I kind of look back at my time at Ohio State, especially the championship season, and two things that I really take away. Number one is people are everything in our lives. There's no question. It doesn't matter how good, smart, talented, brilliant, well-connected. It doesn't matter. All of those things are great, but it doesn't matter unless you have the right people on your team. Whether it's your family, whether it's business and coworkers or bosses. And the second thing for me is it's just a game. Football's just a game.
I don't flash back on that season very often. There was something special about every team. As I think back to '02, probably the thing that jumps out at me the most is the joy that it brought the Ohio State faithful.